Hello, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning also, depending on where you're joining from around the world. We will start in about 7 minutes. Yeah, thank you so much. Um, Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Greetings from Global Green Growth Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues from around the world who have joined us today, thank you so much for taking out time. My name is Ashok Tanikonda. I'm a senior program officer with the Global Green Growth Institute in India. So we are, excited about this, very important conversation that we have lined up today as a reflection on the 10-year anniversary of Sustainable Development Goals. We want to, gather and discuss how the most critical part of achieving these SDGs, which is the financing, how it has happened from around the world, particularly from around the global south. That is what we are going to discuss here today. We have a very exciting lineup of panelists. We have speakers from public sector companies. We have DFIs. We have colleagues from multilaterals and also think tanks. And also we have speakers ranging from India to Korea, but who are able to, also speak on global experiences from around the world as well. So, without much ado, I want to, invite Mr. Sonia Prasad Garnaik, who is the country representative for GGGI India. It's my absolute pleasure to hand over the mic to him. But before I do, a very brief introduction. Mr. Garnaik has been a seasoned, expert and thought leader in energy efficiency in the space of, particularly working with Energy Efficiency Services Limited as an executive director under Ministry of Power. He's also worked with the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. He has more than 28 years of experience, led several, impactful programs in energy efficiency in India. So, sir, it's my honor to call you to address the gathering before we go into the details. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashok, for the kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon to all of you. It's in fact a pleasure and honor for GGGI to have you here for this very important discussion today. It's a virtual dialogue we have planned to celebrate the 10 years of Sustainable Development Goal. If we go back and think that 2015 was a really defining year, and where the countries were members of the United Nations, they agreed on a shared blueprint for a peace and prosperity for the people, and of course for the planet as well. So at that time, the urgency was failed for promoting the peace and prosperity. Uh, but in its heart, if you just see, there are 17 sustainable development goals that was chartered at that point of time, which are an urgent call for the action by all the countries, whether it is developed or developing, in a global partnership. Uh, the countries recognize that ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand, and with strategies that improve health and education, reduce inequality, and also help support in the economic growth, all while tackling the climate change. That's the core of the entire thing as well, and the working into preserving our own ecosystem like oceans and forests. So what we have seen in the last 10 years, we have come a long way. There are few points to rejoice also, but there are other points to look into as well as where we slipped, and which do need some special attention. If I speak about India, our Sustainable Development Goal Index, as per the Press Information Bureau uh, 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 publication, it says that we jumped from 52 place in 2018 to 77th place in 2023 and 2024. So this is a good thing, and there are certain highlights if you just see that how it was affected for this good Sustainable Development Index. One is that all of you know about the clean energy and its access. The Saubhagya Yojana, you may be all knowing about this. That's the universal electricity access to the people for all consumer categories. and also the clean fuel uptake that have reached to the high levels. And thanks to the kind of interventions that we are seeing in the recent past in the renewables, particularly solar, wind, and a biogas sector. We all know about the good works which India did in the sanitation and clean water area also. The programs like Swachh Bharat, the open defecation has been virtually eliminated. We see that almost all rural households have improved the drinking water services. If I may note that the corporate social responsibility, this SR has played a major role in these initiatives as well. We also see the poverty reduction part. Some multidimensional poverty reduction has happened. Some data show that we have 25% in 2015, 2016, as per Niti Aayog's statement. It has reduced to 14.9% in 2019 and 2021. That's the latest figure what I got. We have some numbers with the social protection also. The coverage now is 64% of the population, up from 49% in 2022. So these are some of the good indicators. But however, ladies and gentlemen, if you just see, these are some unfinished tasks, and we still need to do a lot. While the awareness of the SDGs is increasing, stakeholder participation backed by good and effective policies are happening, but the biggest challenge seems to be the financing. The financing gap remains very, very high. It is enormous. Globally, it estimates that it's about 5 to 7 trillion USD per year, which is needed to achieve the SDG goals by 2030. And 2 trillion USD of that will be attributed to developing countries. Just to touch upon the India also faced the similar challenge in the financing side. India's annual SDG funding gap is some numbers say one report puts it that USD 292 billion per year, USD per year. And apart from this, there are uneven progress across the states as well in various SDGs. Some SDGs are lagging, say gender equality, certain health indicators. So these are the variations across the states and union territories. Through many states, although many states have advanced in their achievements, but the range of the performance, the scores still shows some disparities. However, there are some good points which we have taken as an experience. We have seen a drop in the power sector CO2 emissions in early 2025. As I said little while earlier, the clean energy from the supply side has played a major role to achieve this. A report notes about 1% year-on-year decline in the first half of 2025. Record addition of the non-fossil fuel energy, that is a major achievement which we have seen. India has now 50% of its installed capacity from the non-fossil fuels, and we hope that the generation will also match in the coming years. And we are ahead of its 2030 target if we see the clean energy part. But what needs to happen now? What is the way forward? What is the path forward? Where we are heading? The most important thing is to mobilize the finance more deeply. We have the state or central level action plans. We have the good policies. We have good targets. We have set some good, international commitments as well. But to achieve that, so mobilizing the finance is going to be a key, and that is where why we are here to discuss on this challenge. So greater use of the blended finance or maybe climate or SDG bonds, concessional financing that may play a bigger role. We have been successful in certain areas, but there are lots of opportunities are there, and how to harness those opportunities is something we need to think of. The private sector capital, how to get it, how to harness it is also important. And somebody say that only 2% of India's private financial assets, if that would be suffice to actually cover our SDG gap annually. The 290 billion USD what we are showing as a gap. So we must focus on also the targeted prioritization. We should not go into a multi-directional approach and lending nowhere, or maybe without developing a robust mechanism on how to achieve it. But I mean, what I said, tried to say is that the targeted prioritization is also important. So focus on the lagging SDGs, which we are not doing well, particularly health, gender equality, or even inequality that may play a major role, and also address the state level disparities. That means data, compliance, or those things are going to be a major focus, should be a major focus as we go ahead. Uh, they strengthen the data system and accountability. As I said, this is going to play a major role as we go ahead. We have to create that transparency in the system that brings the confidence. So that means we have to have better measurement system, more frequent and disaggregated data, state by state, by income groups, by gender groups, etc. is going to play a very major role. Transparent tracking and feedback also, it looks to adjust the policy decisions or policy framing. We should have to have certain synergies and integration as well, leverage the skills that simultaneously deliver the multiple SDGs, particularly clean energy, linking to jobs, linking to health, well-being, etc. Align climate action, poverty alleviation, or even infrastructure, so that the progress in one reinforces the other. So India's unique position and opportunities there. We are doing well, but we have a lot more to do, considering the market size, considering the opportunities. So with our size and demographic potential, what I see is that India can serve as a demonstration model for the global South. We can show how with our large populations, low middle income status, which is now, and a diverse geographies that can accelerate our SDG with a concrete effort, with a more concerted approach and methodologies. So recent achievements in non-fossil capacity additions shows that it is possible to over deliver in certain domains, and particularly in a very fixed timelines. So global partnerships remains crucial, as I see. Technology transfer will, as always, will play a vital role, and also concessional climate finance, supporting international financial architecture that is going to, I believe, will fill the gaps. So just to make a last reflection on my observation is that the SDGs are ambitious, and we must be ambitious as well. But 10 years already gone. The global stories shows that both progress is possible, and that momentum must increase. For India, the story is one of both, it's a hope as well as the urgency. Uh, as 2030, I mean, it is not very far away, few years away from now. So speed, scale, equity, that really matter at this stage. And India must not just change the average, but also ensure that the region, the community, and the gender, no one is left behind. So Global Green Growth Institute, as an international developmental organization, we are putting all our efforts to help support the government, the communities at the national level as well as the provincial level, to do or take some actions which will help the SDG goals achievable, whether it is in the form of project implementation, proof of concepts, bringing the finance or finance mobilization, so that it can actually help support the entire ecosystem, leading to a win-win situation for all the stakeholders who are involved in this particular part. So we have as I also said, we have a very wonderful panel today. They have tons of experience behind them. My colleagues are there from Seoul, Mr. Gulshan and Ms. Gama from Indonesia. They will be speaking about our experiences, what we have done in the sustainable financing side. We have Supriti ji from REC, Rural Electrification Corporation, Ministry of Power. We have Sujit ji from NAFED, Ministry of Finance. They have very ambitious goals as well as lot of success behind them. We have speakers, Ms. Neha, who will be speaking from the Climate Policy Initiative as well. So let's have and listen to them and see that what are the learnings we can take away from this today's discussion. Thank you very much for inviting me and for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that, very insightful, context setting, both globally and in terms of India, what's happening, where we are, and what we can look forward to. Right. So it's my pleasure now to introduce our first speaker for the day, Mr. Supreet Pandya. He's the Deputy General Manager Finance with the Rural Electrification Corporation. Mr. Supreet has 16 years of experience in finance, managing. He manages a very, impactful portfolio of $18 billion for REC that he manages by raising funds through bonds, loans, and multilateral instruments. His expertise spans international debt markets, forex and FEMA compliance, derivatives, and investor relations. Just for context, REC Limited is a power sector, public sector undertaking under the Ministry of Power. It is one of the foremost financiers of infrastructure in the country, particularly lighting up homes, strengthening grids, and increasing the acceleration towards clean energy. Mr. Supreet, thank you so much. We look forward to listening to your experiences as the mover and doer of things on ground. And your slides are coming up next. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashokji, for such a warm introduction. And good afternoon, everyone. At the onset, I would like to thank Global Green Growth Institute, GGGI, for having me as a speaker in today's virtual dialogue on financing the SDGs, perspectives from the Global South, with global experts on sustainable financing and investments. I'm deeply honored and delighted to have a diversified audience, which is united by a shared commitment to building a better and more sustainable future. As already informed by Ashokji, I represent REC Limited, which is an NBFC, non-banking finance company, and catering to Indian power sector, including renewables and infrastructure and logistics sector in India. And in fact, REC and GGGI, we share a very healthy relationship, which achieved its first major milestone recently in September 2024, when REC issued internationally verified green bonds of USD 500 million with technical support from GGGI. GGGI also affirmed that REC's green finance framework is in full alignment with the international standards. A second party opinion from the Sustainable Fitch was also secured on REC's green finance framework. And in fact, we are also closely working with GGGI for the allocation and impact reporting and for reports on second party verification before publishing of the same on these bonds as well. As already explained, UN adopted its 17 Sustainable Development Goals in 2015 as a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure prosperity for all by 2030. So today I shall briefly try to touch upon as to what in REC we are doing to achieve these SDGs, and shall also touch upon the financing being done and issues that we are facing, the financiers as well as the investors are facing today. So I'll just quickly run through the slides. Maybe we can move to the first slide. So this is basically what in REC we are doing. REC is one of the largest financiers to the renewables in India. As we speak, our renewable loan asset book is reached to almost 64,000 crores as at 30th of June 2025. And we are financing to all the gamuts of renewable energy portfolio in India. And we are the stepping stone for India's energy transition. And we are actively working towards the government of India's target of 500 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity that we have targeted for 2030. And almost 50% of that has already been achieved. And we have to achieve the remaining 50%, 250 gigawatt in the next 5 years. So a steep target, but we all together can achieve this. And in the process, REC has tailored our lending strategies to align with India's commitment to harnessing green and clean energy. So these are the various areas where we are funding to. We are funding to solar, we are funding to wind, hybrid, large hydro projects, pump storage plants, which are actively coming up in India, small hydros. We are also actively funding e-mobility, solar park infra, and a lot more new storages, new technologies that are coming up. As we speak today, till today, REC has sanctioned close to 56, almost 57 gigawatt, gigawatt plus projects across India, which have a emission avoidance potential of 656,075 840 tons, equivalent to 2.62 billion trees. So this is a huge impact that we have tried to create in this SDG goal achievement. On the next slide. Now that was on the business side, and where we are, helping to grow the clean energy and the financing side. REC has been actively tapping the foreign debt market in the form of bond as well as loans for the green energy specific end use. So as we speak, till today, we have issued almost six series of dollar bonds as well as JPY bonds in the Reg S as well as 144A market, which have been subscribed by across the world by all the major investors, and with a bond series of total of almost 2 billion equivalent dollars in JPY as well as USD. We are also tapping the bilateral and the syndicated loan market, where we are seeing a lot of interest from the lenders, specifically in the renewable energy projects, where they want to channelize the funds through NBFCs like REC into the projects which are specifically for the clean energy and green energy sources. So till today, we have raised almost 1,200 billion equivalent dollars of loans in JPY and USD as well, which are specifically being used for the green energy end use. So green energy projects, as I have shown in the earlier slides, they have been primarily financed by our internal accruals as well as these debt that have been raised specifically for the green end. And most recently, we raised money for sustainable loan as well, where the end use is being channelized to e-mobility and clean mobilization and infra. On the next slide, now the interesting part about how we have to raise money, raise finance, it's a global standard that you need to prepare a green finance framework. In fact, REC has a green finance framework, which is aligned by the Climate Bond Standard version 3.0, the Green Bond Principles 2021, which are issued by the ICMA, and the Green Loan Principles. So we have a standardized green finance framework in place, which primarily focuses on 3 out of the major SDGs. One is the SDGs number 7, which is affordable and clean energy. And our renewable energy portfolio specifically falls into this SDG. While we also focus on the clean transportation as well, where we are funding to metro. We are also funding to a lot of e-mobility vehicles as well, which falls in the SDG 9 and SDG 11. So by virtue of all these areas, we are able to cater to a lot of green energy demand, which is there in India. And we are also witnessing a lot of investors who are also interested to lend money specifically for the green energy end use. On the next slide. For the green finance framework, you need to have a very well mechanized systems to be in place. There has to be a proper system where the end use and the green projects are evaluated, and only the eligible green projects, as per the earlier slide which I've shown, they only qualify for the green finance framework. So not all the green projects will qualify. The green projects qualify only and only if they fall under all the eligible criteria which are shown earlier. So first we evaluate the projects, whether they qualify for this. Once that are there, the funds have been received, then the management of the proceeds are also, also manually verified. And it is ensured that each and every money that is raised in the form of green money, it flows actually to the green end use only. And for that, REC reports its green finance instruments annually in its annual report, and we also provide the information to the lenders on a need-based basis and on a periodic basis as well. Additionally, for the comfort of the bondholders, we also get our green finance framework, confirmed by the climate bond initiatives, and each and every bond issued and the end use is also confirmed and certified by a second-party opinion, which is again done by an independent agency. So green money raised comes with a lot of compliances to be done, but it has to be channelized in a proper way to the end use. Now, with all this, I think I'll like to come to the next slide, which is the slide that I want to devote my maximum time to. Because since presently we are setting up a dollar portfolio of close to almost $18 billion, and quite a sizable money has come from the green financing as well. So we have been dealing with this green financing issues on a day in, day out basis. Now, probably the first thing that I want to discuss and I want to highlight to all the participants here that, the green financing, and do we have a real pricing advantage as a borrower for the green financing? Unfortunately, we have been catering to all the geographies, maybe Europe, maybe America, Middle East, APEC, everywhere. But I found very little takers. Everybody wants a green energy asset. Everybody loves it. But if we speak on the pricing advantage that we want, probably most of the investors back out. So there has to be a mechanism, and this we have raised at multiple forums as well. There has to be a mechanism where actually investors come forward for the asset, but it should actually turn into a lower cost of money, which should come to a borrower like us, and so that it reduces the cost to the ultimate power producer or the power developer as well. But unfortunately, at this point of time, the market is still not that very acceptable to the lower cost green financing. Uh, one is obviously the green financing part. And now the second part also comes on the taxation issues or the high withholding tax, which borrowers like us have to pay for any money that we raise from the outside market. Now, we all accept that India requires a lot of financing, especially in the green area. But where we speak on the green financing part, the problem lies that the government charges a very high withholding tax on that. Now, withholding tax uh, on the end use where it has to be green, it should be looked into a different framework. It has to be seen that it's not only the financing that is required, but it's in the overall interest of the environment and the generations to come. But presently, there is no difference as far as taxation is concerned between a green or a non-green financing that is raised by any corporate in India. Compliances part, it's definitely which is very, very stringent. As I've already informed you, a lot of due diligence is required to be done for any green money that we raise. Every penny that comes has to be channelized. It has to be closely monitored. Every penny that is raised, it should go to the end use of green asset only. So a proper mechanism needs to be developed, which requires a lot of efforts, manpower, and a lot of systems to be in place as well. So that is there. Now, impact assessment is also required to be done as to what exactly is the benefit that, in terms of quantification is comes out of these kind of financing, and the disclosures part as well. So green financing has its own lot of compliance burdens which are there on a lot of borrowers per se. Now, one problem that borrowers like us have faced, and maybe the speakers after me would also highlight this, where there's a problem of a lack of common green taxonomy across geographies. So as we speak, the US investors treat a green asset in a different way. Europe treats in a different way. India is still struggling to find a common green taxonomy. We are still in the process of developing it. So currently, we do not have a clear definition exactly as to what is green. And that is not a uniform definition at this point of time. So case evolves at this point of time where we need to identify as to what is green, and that green should be uniform across the world. Because a green which is green for India should not be, it's not green for any other entity, any other geography. And most recently, we have been facing this, geopolitical issues. We have been witnessing a lot of geographies who are just, backing out from the green commitments that they've made in the past. And this is again, creating a complex issues across the world. People who have committed a lot of financing to the green area by virtue of their own governments and the government targets, they now finding it difficult because of their own internal government pressures that, they are finding that probably the things are not required now, which we all accept that in a degree, which is not the case. And the more time we will take, probably, more late we will be in addressing this very burning and important issue. With this, probably I'll just stop here, and I'll again, as a world transitions award towards a low cost carbon future, financing the backbone of green energy growth. renewable energy projects not only require innovation and technology, but also robust financial support, innovative funding mechanism, and policies frameworks. Mobilizing investments in clean energy is critical to meeting the sustainable development goals and achieve the net zero commitment. And I think we all have gathered on this very important issue, and we hope that we take out great insights today from this webinar. Thank you. Thank you, Ashokji.
Thank you, Supriji. Thanks, for really laying it out on the ground in terms of actually what it takes to put this, green finance on the ground into the projects where it matters the most. REC has been a cherished partner for us, and we are really looking forward to doing much more of these innovative finance instruments as we go ahead, both in terms of India's and global aspirations. Thank you so much. I'm also glad you covered some of those questions which I had planned for later Q&A. We'll look back at that. Up next, I'm really excited to call upon Mr. Sujit Kumar. He's the Chief Economist with NAPFID under Ministry of Finance, Government of India. Now, NAPFID is the newest development finance institution of Government of India, tasked with the mammoth, burden of channelizing billions of dollars into India's infrastructure as well as developmental aspirations. Mr. Sujit himself is a professional economist with many years of experience in banking, financial services, shaping research, strategy, and policy perspectives. He regularly contributes to financial media and advises leadership on macroeconomic and developmental trends. Mr. Sujit, it is my pleasure to request you to share a few insights from your vantage point because of NAPFID's unique role and your role at NAPFID. Although I must say that this session probably should have been titled India and SDGs, an economist's perspective. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ashokji, and the whole ensemble of experts here who are having a very important conversation about the global green agenda, I would say. And GGGI has been at the forefront. I can see a lot of initiatives coming from your end, and I'm glad that you have already kind of have a partnership started in India with REC on board. Sooner or later, I'm pretty sure that we have that formal thing going. Just to have a recap of things, because we are meeting at 10th anniversary of SDG. So while the world came together to find a common cause, to identify issues which we need to tackle as a global community, right? It was not about me versus you or either our case. It was we swim together or sing together, right? It's one earth, so one family. And when the concerns are shared, responses do come, right? And this is what the experience has been. If we just look back where we were in 2015 and where we are in 2025, the world has been through many challenges, and one of once in a century kind of challenge was the COVID-19, and which also showed what is possible when human takes a step back, right? The wildlife comes on its own, it kind of heals the whole ecosystem. It shows that by being a bit discretionary in our everyday life choices, we can allow the nature to do whatever we embarked on. So some of the work can be shared by nature, provided we are conscious of what we are doing. So that's one learning taken from COVID. I think India has been really a revelation. We have put our mind to it, and we have shown the world how a collective will of 1.4 billion people can transform things. We were one of the few countries who I would say way back in 2017, 2018 came with a very comprehensive set of document regarding India's approach to SDGs. So while the 7 SDGs have a different set of indicators, India has close to 300 indicators mapped with the 17 SDGs that we have, and it's all it's all cross-linked. It's not either our case. So poverty elimination cuts across many sub-themes that we can talk about, And the biggest theme that I wish to talk today is about managing India's, transition from rural to urban. Because in our developmental journey, this is one big force which is going to upend many other things which comes its way. So business as usual scenario is not going to be the case with India, because next 2 decades we are going to add as many urban citizens as we have over 2 millennia. So that kind of transition managing in 2 decades time will force us to have a very differentiated approach. Gladly, the solutions are in sight, right from technology to finance. And we just kind of took a sizing of what kind of requirement could be there if India were to reach its 2047 goal, what we call Viksit Bharat aspiration. But coming to the climate part, India has also been very rightfully, I would say, vocal about the responsibility of advanced countries in taking or shouldering the share of burden that is on the global community, because those who have benefited from the earlier part of this warming up of planet should also shoulder a little higher responsibility. This is what we call common but differentiated responsibilities. And those who have means to support the transition from to low carbon technologies to better ways of living should do so. What we have seen is that the advanced economies commitments have been far and few, and putting the onus on developing economies with a limited resources at disposal doesn't move the needle very far. Thankfully, in India, we have not been waiting for those funds to arrive before making a move, and this is visible, starting from our energy ambition, for example. So while the broader goal is that we should be net zero by 2070, we have very intermittent goals. I would say middle posts that we have in mind, and we have actually outdone even our ambitious goals for 5 to 10 year period. So by 2030, we envisioned that renewable energy will be more than just about 500 gigawatt, for example. We are already close to halfway there, and renewable makes about half of our total energy capacity today. So the transition has been pretty good, I would say, from any reference standard that we pick, whether at the time scale or the global peer scale. What we have to see is that for other indicators, certain challenges that we had, specifically speaking to the food security and availability, the hunger is one of the indexes, sub-indexes that we have been talking about. Poverty, India has been an absolute winner. If you look at last 20 years, the absolute poverty level is almost gone, right? It was a relative poverty which we are now focusing on, and that's why the emphasis has shifted to multi-dimensional poverty index and measuring progress along those lines. Now, this has been possible because we could sustain growth for a very considerable stretch of time. 3 to 4 decades, we have more than 6% real growth. Now, that's where the compounding gets in. That's where the GDP doubles every 6-7 years in nominal terms, and in real terms every 10 years. So that is how you bring resources to the table, right? It's not just about being frightened by the whole big number. Like I was talking about, a couple of days back, we had a conclave, where we were thinking of what should be the funding required for Viksit Bharat ambition, specifically in infrastructure. And the numbers came closer to 800 lakh crore rupees over 2 decades. So the run rate could be closer to 28 to 30 lakh crore rupees every year, while the current spending is not just about 20 lakh crore. So there is a considerable gap between what is required and what is we are doing. But the confidence that we have is that if we look just 5 years back in 2020, the run rate was close to 10 lakh crore, right? So we have doubled up in less than 5 years. So I mean that's where we get confidence that if we put our mind together, if we put our resources together, we should be able to bring those resources which are required to make the transition happen. Why green agenda remains so important for us? Because of very location that we are having, right? We have one of the largest coastlines, and when global temperatures rise, sea levels are likely to rise. Our agrarian ecosystem is going to get a challenge. Rains could be erratic. There will be heat waves around. The livelihoods will be at stake. We are seeing bits and pockets of our country, where there were no rains are getting flooded, right? Our mountains are crumbling. We are having excessive rains in certain areas, drought in other areas, extended spells of heat waves. So the climate has already started, showing the color. that risk is no more on just academic discussion or paper. It's pretty visible to everybody. So whatever goalpost we have put for ourselves uh, is a call to action. It's no longer just a vision or goal. It's a call to action, and we are at it. We are at it. We just have to find ways to channel resources. And I'm pretty confident that we should be able to do it, especially with the partners like GGGI and others who have access to global pool of capital. At least the capital which is conscious, I would say, capital with conscience, which is willing to shoulder a little higher responsibility to enable those who are in need. It's not just the commercial lens that we should be putting at. We can't wish away from paying what is fair reward to the investors, but investors also have to see not just in terms of return on investments from the pure market metric, but also the contribution to the planet, right? And those things should be visible. My former colleague speaker highlighted that the greenium, what we call, is still to be discovered, right? So that money must show that it is serious about the commitments we are talking about, right? So that discount should come in when I come with a green exposure. Uh, at my institution, for instance, we are as a country, since we are big on renewables. Obviously, funding institutions have also bigger exposure in renewables. So there are a large pool of assets already eligible for a green tag, which should have given us comfort to raise money, under these labels. But eventually, people will question, right? All this effort for what? So if the investor community is shying away from its share of responsibility, then how far the institutions can go forward, doing all those compliances required, building capacity of people to do what is necessary to satisfy those standards, right? So it takes a cost as well as a mindset change, both from both sides, investor as well as issuer side, to make this arrangement happen. Now, this is just one part of story. In fact, I wish to bring to light, a little bigger dimensions. Uh, you know, Conventionally, it's the governments which have moved funding in infra across the board. We don't have any, I would say, country where private sector on its own has come forward and said that I will build infra, I will take this gestation risk. I will take the risk of both economic failures as well as the failures which happen because of political system going for a toss. We have seen in our neighborhood how established systems have crumbled because of popular aspirations being somewhere else. So I mean these things will be there, and that is why somebody who should be willing to take risk from a longer term perspective, somebody who is willing to share risk, because the private sector may not be able to, afford that. These two have to come together. We have to find means. PPP has been tested way, but PPP leaves a lot to be desired. There are issues on interpretation. There are issues of adequacy of the safeguards which are built in this contract, and even if there are contracts assuring a safeguard, whether they will be honored in time for the capital to be content with. I think that will take time to evolve. But we have seen that in India, things have moved very, very far, very, I would say, positively. Certain sectors like road sector, for instance, we have seen dramatic results to our satisfaction. Renewable energy, we have seen a lot of investments flowing in because needle has moved. There is no denial of that. Whether we can replicate those successes in other sectors, specifically for urban transition, when we speak of solid waste management is one big area. Our cities are so crowded and so stuffed, I would say. We need all means available. There is a technology, but whether we can afford the technology, whether build the scale which is required, right, so that it becomes commercially viable, whether we can get the both risk capital as well as debt capital in, whether we can free up some of the state resources from building infrastructure to doing, let's say, health and education, which is required for social upliftment, which is more consequential from the SDG perspective. So these are all things that we have to balance, and that's where the finance gets in a big way. Why urban infra particularly? Because while sizing the opportunity, we realize that half of incremental funding of that 780 lakh crore that we have estimated till 2047 will be required for urban infra, right? So that urban infra is a big umbrella where biggest funding gap remains. And ironically, not many takers are there when it comes to funding that. And urban infra actually connects to the every corner we can think of. It connects to the lived reality. It's not academic discussion I'm talking about. The kind of water people have exposure to, the kind of air they are breathing in, the mobility they are experiencing, the schools their kids are going to, the hospitals they are able to tap into. So all these things are mattering. Yeah.
May I request you to wrap up in 1 minute? We are short of time as well.
Yeah. So I will just take you to the final number, which I wanted to present to you, that maybe the $4 trillion that we keep talking about, the global pool of green capital available. If India can channel even 1% of that, it will go pretty far in fulfilling our SDG obligations. And I'm pretty sure that institutions like GGGI could be that bridge to bring that global capital, patient capital in at concessional rates, which we are looking forward to. So thank you. I think I will stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Sujit, for such a rich tapestry of knowledge. The key takeaway for me is in terms of the scale of ambition and how we make models like PPP work with the best of private sector efficiency and also government mandate and ability to do things, and not probably doing the worst of things together. Right. Thank you so much. Before we move on to our next speaker, I understand that Mr. Supreet has to leave. So maybe I'll request all the speakers, you know who you are, may probably please switch on your cameras for a group screenshot, if I can call it. And then we'll let Supreet ji go. We will take his questions and relate to him later. Not sure if Gulshan is also there. Yeah, Neha.
Yeah, sure. I'm there.
Yeah, can you please switch on your camera? Is that okay?
Yes, my camera.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry. Or maybe I'm told by our comms colleague to request everyone to switch on their cameras, if it's possible. All right. I think we had that done, procedural formality. Once again, thank you so much, Sujit ji. It was a amazing, rich discourse that you have shared with us. Now, closer home, I go to Korea right now to our next speaker, Mr. Gulshan Vashishta. Gulshan is a principal for green investments. He leads our work in sustainable and green finance work in Asia and around the world. It is my absolute privilege, Gulshan, to request you to share your, the experiences, our global experiences of thematic bonds that GGG has been doing to support the SDGs around the world. Over to you, Gulshan. Thank you. I'm so sorry. Just a brief background about Gulshan. Is a sustainable finance expert with 15 years of experience. He has designed several innovative instruments for clean energy, infrastructure, and technology deployment in several emerging economies around global south as well. Over to you, Gulshan.
Hi, Ashok. Hello, everybody. I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me and see me, because for me, the screen is frozen. So I don't know whether it's my bandwidth. I'm in South Korea, it should be the case, but I just want to confirm, Ashok, can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
and
we can hear you. We can hear you. I can also see. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Firstly, thank you for having me, Ashok. It's a real privilege to be on the panel. Of course, I feel nervous speaking after, particularly Garnayak ji and of course my colleagues from REC, Supreet, and also an excellent intervention by NAPFID. I really enjoyed that. The speech from Sujit Kumar. So thank you. Like I said, I do confess I feel a bit nervous, but I was thinking about financing SDGs in the context of, well, what is the picture we want to paint today, and really thinking about 10 years of SDG, right? We are celebrating this in the context of, yes, Paris Agreement was signed. Of course, one of the big things that we should be, particularly people on this stage, a lot of my colleagues here, that we should be extremely proud of is that the president and chair, His Excellency Ban Ki-moon, is actually, the person who crafted or who led that progress when he was at the helm of things within the United Nations. So definitely a big moment. But very quickly, when we reflect back on the decade, the $4 trillion question, that is the financing gap, right? Of course, we can get deeper on the financing gap itself. Of course, there are a number of different avenues to look at. Where are we failing? What are the gaps, right? I can definitely talk about one particular aspect of sustainable finance. And of course, Supreet dwelled deeper into taxonomies and more operational matters. I had a choice of really being strategic and really reflecting back on the SDG financing per se, or getting more narrower into the infrastructure finance or sustainable finance modality. Well, for today, I think I choose to keep it more strategic, keep it more broader in the context of financing the SDGs. And I hope I won't go too far. Of course, I will cover the topic of sustainable finance and infrastructure finance within that remit, right? So firstly, how are we doing globally? The numbers are not looking very strong. If some of us just listened to what United Nations Secretary General spoke about the numbers, there was a very, very strong urge to reconsider of closing that gap of $4 trillion, right? Now, that was, of course, and of course, there were a number of anecdotes on what and how and the others. But guess what? The immediate speech after that was Donald Trump. And we all know what he spoke about, right? And his perception of multilateralism and where we are going alongside, and the progresses that are made, and the way he talks about. And this is the most daunting time in that context. When such a large power is not on your side, and everybody feels the pressure. Therefore, but there's a glimpse of hope here, and I would want to look this last 10 years of SDGs has had the most impactful time of the SDG era. In my perception, is in terms of the daunting time, has been the COVID time. Undoubtedly, from 2019 till I would say the impact of COVID-19 was really lasting up until even early 2022s and mid 2022s, even later. But within that, the reason why I mentioned COVID-19 in the context of SDG today is, and because I imagined a lot of people would be joining from India. So I wanted to talk about, if you look at the graph of what happened. So what is the Indian SDG rank in 2020, right? Is roughly at about 121, right? So 193 countries and that. But guess what? That COVID-19, particularly in the context of India, was that moment of jump and leapfrog, literally about 30 odd countries. We're roughly at 98, 99. I don't know the number, but we definitely within the 100. And this happened because of the vaccination, right? Of course, I will get to climate in a bit. Ashok, don't frown on me if I get too far. But the point I'm trying to make is that these are the moments when there is a potential leapfrog, right? Because entities like us are thinking out of the box. We are thinking of innovative ways and innovative monies that are coming in, driving into the financing part of it, right? When I say innovative monies, now when public finance is under tremendous pressure because of undoubtedly the Trump administration and the others, not to forget the polarization and the number of conflicts that are going on in the world at the moment. But remember, economic growth is one indicator in the SDGs, right? There are many other factors, particularly climate, and getting into the topic now is of the highest importance, particularly as Sudhir mentioned, sorry, as Sujit ji mentioned, I apologize, is that it's not a matter of talk anymore. 1.5 degrees is well, at best a dream, I would say. We are facing the calamities now. We spoke today with a number of parliamentarians, and the situation is quite grim because they're giving you numbers, and the numbers don't look good, particularly linked to the natural calamities, right? So in that context, is it really the 4 trillion gap is my question. And then what is the world doing about this 4 trillion gap? I do want to acknowledge the leapfrog that India has made as an example of seizing the opportunity. Yeah, when the opportunity arose, when there was a reason to innovate, particularly the vaccination part of it. As a context, I think a similar intervention is needed on the climate part of it. Now, of course, mitigation and REC spoke very in depth about the energy sector. That is another success story from the Indian diaspora globally, right? That we all talk about is the energy success or the energy sector success of India, right? Particularly on the clean energy side of things, and it is a very strong success story. Apart from the digital and tech, which even our Minister of External Affairs speaks globally when he goes. In the context of infrastructure finance and sustainable finance, therefore, what is really lacking, right? I think gone are the days when we used to say, oh, there's a lot of money out there, and there's a lot of there is a lack of project preparation and technical assistance. Now, the biggest challenge globally is roughly about 12% of all GDP of LDCs, 12% is paid in the interest component of the debt, of the global debt that they are taking, right? Now, this is a challenge that we need to understand, that LDCs don't have their books. LDCs don't look good to finance. LDCs don't look solid for any kind of intervention, forget climate, right? And thus their cost of financing is very high, right? How many success stories do we have from MEGA that we can talk about on country-wise insurance mechanisms, or parametric insurance, and different financing mechanisms that we talk about globally that has advanced billions of dollars into the LDCs at the same rate at which developed economies can get access to. So the most important aspect, and blended finance is probably become a cliche now. Everybody talks about blended finance, but really where is the catalytic funding, right? Let's talk about the GCF and SIF, the two most, well, I think the most important climate finance institute. $17 billion at SIF and roughly about 18 billions with the GCF total mobilization in the last 10 years, right? What are we talking about in the 4 trillion gap of roughly about 35 billion, mobilized, well, 35 billion committed, and not even getting into mobilized and implementation, therefore. So the situation is, well, to be honest, not the most brightest, right? But there is hope. And I'm giving you the example of hope, particularly from the India example of vaccination, the India example of the energy sector. Now, financing by default can never be just a financial model, can never be an investment person talking about what is really needed in the context of throwing money at the problem is not the solution, right? It is a package. And at GGGI, I mean, I would like to mention that we work across the different parameters. Without a doubt, the most important remains the policy and regulatory and the legal framework for the countries to adopt and make sure that these are implemented. Mark my words, I'm not saying that these are issued or published and the others, but implemented in the context which can really move the needle, right? And there are ample examples and success stories out of India that needs replication, particularly, the poverty eradication or poverty eradication matrix for the SDG. Very strong story within the Indian context. Now we need this to replicate this again in the climate 4A per se. Getting into financing SDGs, what is it that we need? Sujit ji mentioned 10% of the $4 trillion is $400 billion, definitely a strong indicator, right? What I'm trying to say is that money is not fungible as we may have spoke about probably 1 year ago, right? Particularly on the project preparation and technical assistance side, I can tell you of experience that we're really seeing the difference now. The amount of pressure on the multilaterals, particularly the United Nations network and the others, on just being able to create the impact. So the project preparation part, right? No projects will be funded. I can't take anything to REC. I'm just sad that Supreet is not here, but I have NAPID to talk about. There's nothing without a strong feasibility or a very strong commercial due diligence that any financial institution would look at. Forget about the catalytic part of it, which takes, on an average, and I'm not talking of my mind, it is in the records. An average GCF project takes about 1,000 days, and this is in their report from the initiation till the get-go, right? And this is changing definitely under the new leadership. But I don't want to paint a very grim picture. But honestly, the results are making me think what is. I'm just reflecting on what has really happened in the last 10 years, right? And I'm just trying to point out on best cases that we need to pick up and really see how we can leverage on those and make that or bring that into forefront of our execution going forward. Well, one thing that I would like to mention is in this context, green bonds for the last, I guess, 2021, another pandemic success, right? Is the green bond market, right? There is this discussion about greenium, but for all the financiers here, I would just want to the context of greenium. The context of greenium is really linked to bankability, right? Particularly for the renewable energy sector. It is not de-risking a program, right? So we talk about different financing mechanisms, and I believe that the concessionality that the financiers are demanding should be appropriate to what is the bankability, or let's say the viability gap that we are trying to fill in. Of course, in the context of green hydrogen and the more upcoming sunshine sectors, I completely believe there's this need of catalytic high concessional funding, right? But for the business as usual, RE programs that are going globally, of course, we need to rethink about the financing modalities there and what is the kind of greenium that we should expect of this on the back of strong guarantees and the impact that fund can create, right? So green bonds, they are not necessarily concessional. I do want to acknowledge that. The coupons don't go very far in terms of giving us any long-term financing or getting us, strong greenium, if that's what we're looking for. That is where probably adaptation is where I look at, strong greeniums. If there's an insurance around, saving agriculture or sustainable forestry, my colleague Gamma will come in a bit and talk about, I'm sure she'll have a lot of examples around those because I know she's an expert in that context. Economic, the concessions, the ecosystem concessions that are there in Indonesia. So I can completely understand greenium in that context. We need to really reassess on where and what is the greenium and what are we really unlocking. And that should be our ask. Of course, there has to be a global push towards catalytic funding, needless to say. So bond market, yes, there is a momentum since 2022. 3 years, we've seen a lot of momentum, a lot of large transactions to talk about. But again, relook at the numbers in the context of the problem that we're facing, right? The largest bond issuance till date still remains $3.8 billion, two tranches total $4.2 billion, Peru, right? Can we be proud of that? Probably not. But there comes the aggregation model that on the back of such a deal, I do want to believe there is a strong momentum. And cumulatively, we've definitely touched roughly about 300 to $400 billion globally to that tune of issuances in the last 2 or 3 years, right? Biggest beneficiaries around the globe: Singapore Stock Exchange, Hong Kong Stock Exchange, Luxembourg, London, Nasdaq, and others. Now, yes, of course, GGGI has been instrumental in setting the right context. We do the frameworks, we do the SPOs, we walk with our clients to to get them to help them raise funding from the markets. Now, the best part, and I think there are two contexts again that I would like to highlight, not to sound too preachy, but NDCs, remember, was
Gulshan,
INDCs before.
Gulshan, may I request to wrap up in 2 minutes, please? Thank you.
Right. The last 1 minute really is the context of bonds issuance. I lost the chain of thought. You have to remind me, Ashok. Now that you've intervened, you have to tell me what I was saying.
I'm so sorry, but we can pick it up at the Q&A towards the end. Yeah.
I could. No, so I'll wrap up. I'll wrap up by saying, yes, GGGI has been instrumental globally to support the issuances and global SDG agenda. We've supported roughly about $15 billion ourselves. We've been engaging with Central Asia. We've worked with very strong partners in India. I'd really like to acknowledge the effort that REC has put in to raise capital from the international market. I would also like to mention that the new phase of funding or financing coming through for the next 10 years is really pivotal, and it is coming through the EU. EU is supporting us going forward with a new program called as GGGI, which will be a strong accelerator where we would be able to support much larger issuances around the globe. And we'll be really looking forward to engage with India and of course, very important countries, Indonesia and the others, to support the financing stream. I'll give it back to you, Ashok. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Gulshan, for laying out the global perspective and our own experiences of GGGI in supporting these sustainable and infrastructure investments from around the world. I like one statement you made, which is really a good segue for me to the next speaker. All adaptation, all mitigation and no adaptation makes our growth very vulnerable and not at all resilient. So we really want to cover perspectives from adaptation as well. And I'm very glad I have our colleague from Indonesia, Ms. Gama Sudarso, who's the Senior Investment Officer with Indonesia Office, GGGI. She's going to speak on the next topic. So she specializes in climate finance and RED Plus with 11 years of experience focusing on sustainable land use and conservation in Indonesia. She has a rich experience of working with governments, businesses, and communities to mobilize investments for resilient landscapes. And so with that, I want, Gama, please share your insights on leveraging climate financing for resilient growth. The slides are coming up on the screen for you. Yeah.
Yep. So thank you very much also for the turn, and also I'm very honored to join in this panelist, a prestigious panelist in this event. Taking into account of the notes from the previous speaker on lesson learned from India and the similarity of the work in Indonesia, I think this is something that I also want to highlight in these sessions, especially on how Indonesia context leveraging the climate financing for resilient growth. So, without further ado, on the I want to inform you on how Indonesia SDGs adaptations and the national effort that is collectively supported by the governments, the communities, the private sector, as well as the development agencies, including GGGI Indonesia. So all of the SDGs effort, especially that related to national government priority programs, is in process to ensuring that the achievement of NDC is well aligned with the current context and situations of Indonesia. So in here, there's several um, priority programs that coming from the government of Indonesia that's quite similar with the ones that conducted by India. We also work together in terms of with the communities, how the resilience energy to address the climate needs from the communities as well, how this adaptations effort in the marine and fisheries and the coastal resilience, as well as how the capacity buildings for the adaptations is really reflected up until the communities level. So in here, I think we have to also acknowledge that this adaptation effort is reflected as well in the second NDC of Indonesia, which is still in the progress, taking into account more strategic programs and actions related to strengthen resilience in economic, social, livelihood, ecosystem, and landscape system. So in here, it's not only Indonesia, but I guess for all countries, especially in developing countries that impacted by the climate change. For Indonesia itself, the climate change impacts is also impacted our national GDP. And if you can see in here, there's four sectors that is highly affected, which is food, water, health, and ecosystem. All of these sectors shown that lower GDP resulted because of the impact of the climate change. And it will not resolve only depending by the state budget. So in here, if you see in the right side view, taking information from the Ministry of Finance, you can see that the state budgets from the government of Indonesia on responding or in climate action effort, especially related to adaptations, is lower and lower and will be stagnant. So that's why it's important for us, especially Indonesia, to ensure that this financial support coming from multilateral support, bilateral, and also commercial banks can be transparently and reported in which sector, subsectors that will affect the to our adaptations. So in here, you can see that up until 2021 and 2022, and it's reported in our biennial transparency report of Indonesia. In terms of adaptation action, we receive support up until thousands, more than million US dollar. But it's not all divided equally for those sectors. If you see here, it will mostly focus on the economic resilience in terms of the agriculture sector, the plantations, as well as the community-based program, while in terms of the watershed, the health system, the coastal zone protection, it's remained lower than in economic resilience. And we also transition, I mean, Indonesia government also transition to become more transparent, more robust in monitoring the financial support, the capacity building support, or technology support that will lead to adaptations, actions, efforts that can be reported in a national and also international um, sector. So in here, if you see comparable with the mitigations, only 6% that our supports is for mitigations, and up until 94% is coming for adaptation or may lead to adaptations. In here, the biggest support that coming is coming from the multilateral, which is we are also supported by the Green Climate Fund and also Global Environment Fund. And again, we have donors that is close confident of Indonesia in works on adaptation and joint mitigation adaptations for bilateral cooperations. But again, Indonesia also want to push the collaborations with more commercial banks on providing loans, debts, and also other instruments that can be provided to accelerate the adaptation actions in Indonesia. I think in here it's also quite similar with the other countries in Asia and also Pacific. Indonesia access several fundings from international institutions, and in here with GGI we support government of Indonesia, especially Ministry of Finance, becoming the climate finance focal points for the Green Climate Fund, and it allows the accredited entities, be it domestic or international accredited entities, to support bringing on the financial support for Indonesia, especially for mitigation and adaptations projects. But again, Ministry of Finance have a country platform that's actually also supported by GGGI Indonesia. So we are support their special mission vehicle, including the Indonesian Foreign Fund, SDG Indonesia One, and also the ETM country platform to attract more funding from the multilateral, from bilateral, and the philanthropy. In here, I also shown you that Indonesia has several bilateral and multilateral partnership that can be used or accessed for funding adaptations projects. Um, with Indonesia also joined with BRICS and several diplomatic channel for climate change sustainable financing. I think in terms of opening access to funding for adaptation effort, we will not only rely on this agency or institutions, but we are also welcoming the philanthropies support coming and also acknowledge in country platform of Indonesia. And if you see here, I want to show you on how the difference between the fundings that we receive coming from the Green Climate Fund and what is government of Indonesia do in terms of below the line financing through sustainable government securities. So by the status of July 2025, most of the projects that we are receiving still in grant basis, and the grant projects will not will have their limitations, right? And then so that's why we want to make sure that there are projects that is more sustainable, that the projects that were conducted can be incorporated into the national government planning, ensuring the sustainability after the project ends. In here, some of the projects also receiving support or able to access further findings from the government securities, let's say in the green sukuk. So in here, there's a lot of sectors that very much well aligned with the adaptations, such as the sustainable water and water management, the resilience to climate change, sustainable transport, and the most recent one is the renewable energy and energy efficiency. This is a growing market in Indonesia for more adaptation project can be funded through the Green Sukuk. So in here, how we want to make sure that enhancing the climate resilience can be closing the gaps of financing for adaptations up until 2030. So Indonesia itself, we require around 816 more million US dollar that should be supporting three resilience, economic, social, and livelihood, and also ecosystem. But we have to take into account the prioritizations of the regional, considering the risk factors, the impacts, and the conditions of regional vulnerability that is different because we have a 17,000 islands that have a different vulnerability, and then it will affect also with the prone to disaster in each region. But we also need to consider as well of the sectoral prioritization. So there's a lot of projects, a lot of government priorities coming into the food, water, energy, but remain still stagnant for the health and ecosystem. Um, there's also a bring more projects that coming for the ecosystem disaster management, but again, we still reshaping on how we ensure that we receive more financing for disaster management. So I think in here, in the adaptation categories, in terms of the economic, social, and ecosystem, let's get resilience, we can use this one as the pipeline of the projects that can be tapped into the for the multilateral, for the bilateral, or for developing the climate finance that coming from the national commercial banks. I also want to deep dive on how this reflects into the Apollo, the and why this is something that I want to share because most of the projects that supported by GGGI Indonesia is highly related to forestry and land use. And then the second one will be the renewable energy. So in here, in terms of we want to make sure that GGI Indonesia here uh, providing answers on the opportunities to tackle to answer the barriers that coming from the financing challenges in Indonesia. So I hope it's more clearer in here that several projects that conducted by GGGI Indonesia hopes that it will also support government Indonesia in terms of adaptations approaches in Apollo sector. So in here through one of the projects in Indonesia, the landscape investment partnership in Indonesia, which the ones that I'm managing these key intervention adaptation activities, focusing on the community-based forests and also a better management of sustainable landscape. In several landscape or several provinces, we also want to make sure that this potential commodities coming from the communities, the forest dependent communities, and we support.
Gama,
Yep.
may I request you to wrap up in 2 minutes, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in here, there's in these three sub-projects, we support in strengthening the community based business that is very much linked with increasing their capacity, and also access to finance, hoping that this can reduce their dependency on converting the forest area. And then the second one is our nature-based solution projects in mangrove landscapes. We support in rehabilitations of mangrove ecosystem and increasing the community capacity as well in better land management. One of the emerging projects in Indonesia as well as in several countries that's supported by GGI is technopreneurship. We're focusing on several startups and also the yep. I think that's a like confusions. I hope it's clear now.
It is clear. It has been clear. Yeah.
Ashok, did my sounds coming to you good?
Yes. Yes.
Yep. So my last thing is that this technopreneurship is new projects that will be conducted by GJ Indonesia, and we will focus on adaptation technologies and how we provide immediate investments from several adaptations sectors that will be conducted in Indonesia, focusing on the startups and SMEs. And the last slide will be more focused on the way forward, what is important for leveraging finance for adaptation effort. So in here, I think that it's critical and required accelerated action is focusing on ensuring the adaptation focused development incorporated in the government planning and accelerate implementations. And I think it's not only me, but also the other speakers focusing on better tracking, better alignments of the adaptation, let's say finance, to be reported in the same metrics that used for SDGs. And in here, financing resilient infrastructure is needed and more nature-based solutions projects that work with governments. In here, I'm also thinking that this prioritize strategy and enhance engagement, especially with the financial institutions, with private sector is needed. We will not only focusing on the national government, but the collaborations that is conducted with provincial municipalities or in terms of between private sector and communities, this is the one that more impactful and will provide more lesson learned to shaping the proper incentive and proper clear returns for investing in adaptation project. And again, stakeholder collaboration is a must. It's not only partnership from public and private, but we consider also the emergence of philanthropy in adaptation projects in Indonesia is quite high, and we think that this is something that we can also support. I mean, GGI Indonesia and GGI in all over the world can support the stakeholder collaborations between philanthropy, public and private. I will stop there and thank you so much for the time, Aso.
Thank you, Grama. Indonesia has been a leader in terms of climate adaptation work. We are really glad to have this rich experience also being shared here. So I apologize to the audience. We're running about 20 to 30 minutes late, but I'm not really sorry. Also, we're having such exciting conversations. So up next, I have the pleasure of requesting Ms. Neha Khanna, Associate Director with the Climate Policy Institute, as our next speaker. She has 15 years of experience in financial advisory and risk consulting. She advances sustainable finance across Asia and Africa, and she serves as a global expert on climate risk standards, finance strategies, and net zero pathways for institutions. She's going to add a very critical perspective of what kind of policy instruments can governments leverage to finance SDGs. Just in terms of housekeeping, I think I'll request Neha to conclude by 4:40 India time, and then we'll quickly do a rapid Q&A, one question to each speaker. Thank you. Thank you. Neha, your slides are coming up.
Yeah, I'm just sharing my slides. So thank you so much, Ashok and GGGI. I will be very honest. I am following up on a very stellar discussion that's happened so far. And so I'm going to just take very quickly the first few minutes to just lay a context for those who might not be fully well versed with all the policy instruments that India has had and why there is a need for policy instruments. It's established that the SDGs will need substantial amount of public finance to exist. Also, private finance is equally important. And if we look at CPIs, so the last landscape report that we did was in the Indian market, we find that the finance flows are nearly equally balanced between public and private sources, with about 60% coming from private. However, having said that, if we were to trace back the development in whether it's climate green or the whole SDG ecosystem, public finance has had a huge role to play. And two speakers before me was mentioning about how India jumped about 30 ranks because of the vaccination program that happened. And that's a great example of how public finance was really useful, and as was the participation of the private sector. So, I mean, this is the need for policy instruments is a given. They create enabling environment, they align with long-term development strategies, and improve the efficiency of expenditure on SDG-related activities. I'll just explain a little bit on the last point, because the first two I just explained, but when we say improves the efficiency, it allows leveraging of private sector to come, or it allows for private sector to leverage, whether it's through de-risking mechanism or whether it's through creating a safety net or kickstarting a specific area, for example, renewable energy. It was kickstarted by policy, and over the last 10 years, the creation of that sector reached such a stage that as of today, large-scale renewable energy is able to attract private capital on its own. So moving on, what are the policy instruments that we see for financing SDGs? From a public finance perspective, it's fiscal transfers, it's budget tagging, and it's fiscal instruments, including taxes and subsidies. From a market-based instrument perspective, there's thematic bonds, and in blended finance, and when we say blended finance, it's a very broad term that we're using because guarantees typically are de-risking. But when we look at how they can be used, they can be blended. They can be used as a de-risking to increase blending. Concessional capital is needed for blending, as are and your development or impact bonds or social impact bonds are also blended, because usually they have a de-risking or a public social element attached to them. Now, what has India done? Examples in terms of the public finance instruments. So we'll start with the fiscal transfers. The fiscal transfers are actually determined by the Central Finance Commission. And there is a devolution mechanism that exists, which allows for funds to be transferred from central level to state level, and so on and so forth. Now, inclusion of the parameters in the devolution can actually help in directing finance to priority areas. And in terms of the policy precedents, the 14th Finance Commission actually for the first time included forest cover in the devolution formula. This was done to compensate the states through basically through additional revenue for the fiscal disability caused due to opportunities foregone. Effectively saying, please don't cut down on forests. Whatever revenue you would have earned from having an economic activity happen in the place where forests are, we will compensate you through a devolution, through the devolution mechanism. This is not unique. But why is it so important is because so far this had been done at an international level. You've had international funds use this concept, but actually doing this and putting the mechanism in the Finance Commission, it solidifies and actually gives incentives to states to actually let the forests be and find out alternate areas for economic activities. This is supported by budget tagging. Budget tagging is very, very critical because if we really look at the basics, unless you actually know what is happening or where the money is going or where the money needs to go, you really cannot take very directed decisions, or you cannot have directed interventions. So budget tagging is very, very critical. In the international scenario, the Addis Ababa Action Agenda led to the creation of INFF, which is the Integrated National Financing Framework, which was focused on alignment of public budgets with SDGs. In India, we've had a few states actually do this. Assam is one of them, which releases an SDG-linked outcome budget every year. Orissa released it for 2 years. Meghalaya has been doing it since 2022-23. Because this has been done at a state level, there is no one common framework or methodology that exists. Until the time the central government doesn't adopt a tagging, we expect that states would follow their own tagging. Having said that, this is still a very important step because even if it is not a common methodology, at least through studying of the budgets, you're able to get a understanding or a snapshot of where the finances are flowing and in which schemes, which also helps in understanding how effective have the mechanisms for finance flows to schemes been, not only from a central to state level, but also from the state to the actual project implementation level. And all of this is on one side. The other side of which is the taxes and subsidies. So taxes we have to pay. Subsidies are given to us. Both of these are sort of a balancing act, but equally important. We've heard about carbon tax. We know we've had fuel excise duties being leveraged. We know that taxes provide behavioral incentives. Now, if in the broader picture of things, if we look at the SDG goals, we have seen over the last decade or so, over the last decade effectively, since the SDGs have come into play, taxes have played an important role. Whether it's through tax breaks for renewable energy or through putting taxes so that you have additional revenue coming. Whereas the subsidy part of the equation has been the turbocharger or the growth starter for the sectors. In health, you have the Ayushman Yojana, you have PDS for food security, you have the FAME scheme for electric vehicles, you have the Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Yojana, which is for rooftop solar. All of these are incentives which have helped finance flow to the necessary sectors. Now, this was on the public finance instrument side. Coming to the market-based instruments, and I'll actually just take a minute again to sort of lay a base here. We will hear a lot of bond types come into the market. You will have green bonds, social bonds, sustainability-linked bonds, transition bonds within the quote-unquote green or ESG bond gamut. You also have different colors coming in. You have a blue bond, you have a yellow bond, all of that. But what's important at the heart of it is that bond issuance means that you're able to access the capital markets. And why this is important is because India has predominantly been a banking sector country, which means that about 80% is supported through the banking network or the banking sector. And the capital markets have been not as deep or as wide. But with the introduction of a variety of avenues and instruments, the market has started growing. And some of the speakers before me had also referenced how the green bond market in India has actually grown post-COVID. And which is actually true, that if we look at it, while globally the green bond and the thematic bond market has sort of slowed down, in India, the last 2-3 years have actually seen a rise of issuances of ESG related bonds. And why I'm using the word ESG related bonds is very specific to the Indian context, because the capital markets regulator, which is SEBI, has actually come out with a guidance calling ESG bonds or ESG debt securities, which covers the whole gamut from green bonds to sustainability linked bonds as well. We've heard a lot about blended finance instruments, but I'm actually going to just focus on the second part, which is the guarantee part. We often hear the term that financing for SDGs or financing climate or financing environment is very risky. There are high perceived risks. Now, how do we sort of address for those are through de-risking mechanisms. There are 3 broad ones which exist. One is guarantee, the other is insurance, and the third is surety. All 3, I'm talking from an Indian market perspective. And what guarantees they do is they provide sort of a comfort to the lenders that even if the investment does not go through, they have a fallback. One of the biggest success stories in India has actually been the CGTMSE, which is sort of run by SIDBI. They've also partnered with World Bank to give to have a decarbonization fund. They've also helped kickstart the energy efficiency sector. Another example is Rabo Foundation with USAID guarantee to Ananya Finance and Samanati Finance for funding climate smart agriculture SMEs. So this is on the blended finance instruments, and I know that the time is limited, so being conscious of time, happy to take questions offline or get into or go deeper into any of the areas which someone may want to understand. But with that, I'll hand it over to you, Ashok. Thank you.
Thank you, Neha. Such very lucid insights and very powerful reflections. And also, thanks for being on time. Really appreciate it. So I think as I promised, I just have one question for each speaker. We also have a couple of questions from audience. But first off, you did talk about how governments are using the available resources, but often we see that there are multiple schemes that are happening. Do you think we are able to use convergence to amplify the impact on where we are targeting the SDGs, for example?
So if I may answer that question, I think it's a very tricky area to be very honest, because a lot of these areas are new. I think there have been cases where a scheme has been designed. However, only to be realized that this possibly needs to be merged with another scheme because the landed cost gets too high, or the implementation faces challenges. One example would be on the and this is where, looking at so from the looking at it from a convergence side, it is the PM Kusum and agrovoltaics, for example, right? There the costing can be supported by PM Kusum. However, with caveats, to be very honest. Feed-in tariff would be good to have for agrovoltaic because it is needed. However, and while PM Kusum can help with the PV cost, the structural costs associated are very, very high. Depending on the height of the structure, actually, it can go up to about 1 crore per megawatt. So separate categorization and having feed-in tariffs will actually help in promoting agrovoltaics, which is very important because at least in the research that we have done so far, we haven't found other government schemes which have a coverage for the structure cost. And given that the structure cost is so high, it is important. So the convergence of PM Kusum with the agrivoltaic scheme would be helpful 100%. Possibly the addition of another scheme and or feed-in tariffs would really be a game changer. So do we think convergence of government funding schemes for achieving SDGs is needed? Yes, because I think synergies and co-benefits really have to be built into projects now, given the limited capital pool that is available and the mammoth task that is ahead, not only for India, but for the world at large in tackling these challenges.
Thank you. Thank you. That very interesting example of agro-photovoltaics for a candidate of convergence models. My next question quickly is to Gama. Gama, you've explained a lot about what kind of government and multilateral funding initiatives are coming to support adaptation. But do you think we can also leverage private sector for this?
Yeah, I think leveraging the private sector is now the have a greater opportunities compared to the previous year. So one of the success story that comes from Indonesia is the several municipal or regional province that works together with the private sector in Rimba Collective. They also gain benefits from the project supported through Lestari Capitals and funded by the donors, private sector donors, to protect and restore areas and increase the capacity of the communities within. I think responding to the increase uh, prone disaster in Indonesia, government of Indonesia itself also allows private sector involvement in several adaptations projects that can be supported either through CSR or through other instruments. So one of the success story also in the ecosystem restorations in mangrove in East Kalimantan that is funded by the CSR coming from the national oil and gas companies, and they not only restoring the mangrove but also in collaborates with the universities to conduct R&D, research and development, and support to increase or and train the communities in terms of better land management and how to conduct crop restorations. And the last one is the new funding facility that is just developed by the Minister of Finance in the one of their financial government financial institution, which is Indonesia Endowment Fund. So they open endowment fund for disaster risk that can provide grants for provincial, district, or municipalities that is affected by this natural disaster, and this can be used for uh, infrastructure repairments or development of adaptations infrastructure needed. So there's a lot of angles that can be supported by the collaborations between the governments, the private sectors, and also the communities.
Thank you, Gama. Very, very interesting to hear about the Rimba collective model and probably how it could be adapted to other country contexts. Thank you so much. So I want to close it off with the final question from audience. Sujit ji, I think of the speakers, you are best suited to this. You can also conclude with this. Is the question from Mr. Barua about how our Indian financial institutions are getting to meet with the climate finance taxonomy, and will the capital available under this mandate be significantly competitive?
Thank you. I think widely covered by the previous speakers in detail. So it's more of a reiteration. First of all, India's approach to SDGs, as I started with, is not Eurocentric. Okay, it emanates from our own perspective of how balanced and holistic development should be. Having said that, whatever goals we set out for NDC, for example, uh, for 2070 target, we have overachieved. In fact, we are running ahead of the timeline. Now, coming to the finance perspective, it has to be a blend of both budgetary provisions, inviting private sector to in, and I would say the ESG funding available overseas, how best to channel it to India. But the concerns have to be met. There is no other way, right? If there are concerns of, let's say, greenwashing, that has to be addressed. The frameworks, whichever it is, whether it is taxonomy or any other certifications which are required from the agencies which are trusted globally by investors, the process part has to be taken care of. Now, how financial institutions can do it, because they have exposure to both, carbon intensive sectors as well as, carbon reducing sectors. That has to be sacrosanct. You should not be having a differential judgment when it comes to your book. That assurance itself will be inviting to global capital. At our end, for instance, like I said, quarter of our book is to renewables. And within renewables, there are segments where there is no doubt, it's labeled green. In some segments, we may have, some inputs may not be that renewable. You might use thermal energy to, for example, create certain storages, which might be later on used for certain other purposes. So we have to figure out how green it is in terms of project planning, and we have to figure out how best to maintain our accounts so that the suspicion is not there. So that is how we can get the investors' trust in. Right now, coming to the pricing part of it, I think at some stage it has to be visible in pricing. All talk and no pricing is not going to get us very far. Some days people will do, at least people internally who are at every stage talking, questioning, in fact, why you are so intent on moving to green. They will come up. They will say that after all this, what have you saved? Right. So getting concessional funding in is the way forward. Like one of the speakers had already given the colors on the blended finance part. This is where an institution like us have a role to play, which are trusted both, locally from the government authorities and the private sector, as well as globally, because now you have an anchor in an emerging market like us. We can assure that whatever funding that we channelize from the MDBs is being put to the best use. Whatever projects that we are kind of appraising, the standards are open to everybody whosoever is interested in India story. So this is where the project preparation, this is where the audit of progress of project, this is where the carbon impact, this is where the financing part of it, everything should be available to investors or the fund providers on the go. It's not a once in a year affair. The data has to be visible to build, I would say, credibility. And that's the way forward for me to get funds in. And there is no shying away from, even investors' part of story that you have to appraise it differently. If you want green agenda to go forward, you have to provide funds at a differential rate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for that very insightful answer, Sujitji. And with that, I want to conclude our session today. Thank you a lot for your patience and interest in staying, even though we kind of overshot our time. I really want to thank all the speakers, my colleagues at GGGI, particularly my colleague Rushali, who was very, deftly coordinated across time zones to organize this. Thank you all. We'll build on this conversation and, get back to you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Look forward.
Thank you.